up, get out right out of your bed, that's your quicksand. Getting rid anxiety and head, you can fix it. Rid of stigmas, all of them you said, we ain't listening. Just remember, try to do your best, you can win this. Maurice Benard, State of Mind.
Hello, this is State of Mind. If you like what you see, or even if you don't like it, hit this button right here. It says subscribe, because we're doing great and we're going to even do better. Thanks to you guys. Appreciate it. So today we have, I'm kind of feel, I don't know why, but you know, when I have somebody that's in the chair that's smart, very smart, I get like I'm in school, like I'm a boy in school, and there's the teacher. But I love what we're gonna do today because she is a clinical psychologist. Sounds good, don't it? I don't exactly know what that means, but it sounds great. Professor and addiction expert at UCLA. And we're gonna, you know, mental health, the whole thing. She's all in, and I want to ask her a bunch of questions, especially since I just went through some stuff recently. I'm excited that she's here. Suzette Glasner, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So, since we don't know each other, I mean, you told me a little story about GH. Why don't you bring that up? Because that's kind of a sweet story.
Oh yeah. As a kid, my mom loved General Hospital.
Right.
And it was like back when the opening song was the one with the sirens and the white background and the hospital band. So it's been a while. I guess I'm dating myself. But my mom had a VHS recorder, and she would just manually record it every day while I was at school. And it became like a little bonding thing that we did when I would come home. She'd say,
and you would see Sonny and Brenda.
Sonny and Brenda, Luke and Laura.
Damn.
Anna Devane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was really good days. Really gripped by that show.
Those were kind of heydays, you know. It was kind of, you know, it was, I mean, it still goes on to now. But I started 31 years ago. Damn. So you were probably watching with Sonny and Brenda. That wasn't the beginning, I think. I think I didn't start working with Vanessa till maybe a couple years into it, maybe.
Yeah. But I think I was watching around the time when you made your grand entrance. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I think so. Yeah. You were the big deal mob boss. I mean,
in the strip club.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So tell me about yourself. Like, where'd you grow up, and how many brothers and sisters? And
yeah, I grew up right here in Los Angeles, right over near UCLA. Actually, my dad used to take me bowling at UCLA. They do not have a bowling alley there anymore, but they did at the time. And I remember being there and saying, gosh, one day I want to go here. It's like walking distance from my house. It's a beautiful place, and felt like really smart people went there. So I grew up in LA with my older sister and my parents, who are from South America. They actually came here from Chile. So they were trying to figure out what America was all about. And I guess me and my sister helped them a little bit to learn about all of the risks around Los Angeles for young people growing up. Yeah, we were all just figuring it out as we went. But yeah, I ended up like living that dream that I had to go to UCLA. I went right into UCLA as an undergraduate. I studied psychology. I loved it, and I just knew that's what I wanted to continue to do. So I actually went straight out of my undergrad at UCLA to grad school to get my PhD in clinical psychology, with which the question about what that means, I know it sounds really fancy, I guess,
Yeah, it does.
but I mean, there's so many different ways that you can study psychology. You can study social psychology and just the way people interact with each other. You could study experimental psychology and just do all science in a laboratory. And in clinical psychology, you're really studying human behavior in the brain and also understanding it from the perspective
Oh.
of like when there are abnormalities in psychology, or what abnormal psychology is, what it means to be depressed or have an abnormal personality or to have certain behaviors that are out of control. And then you learn how those are diagnosed as mental health conditions, and then you learn how to treat them. So all that training it's like a mix of depending on the type of program you go to, but I went to a scientist practitioner program. So it's like very heavy on the science. So you learn about all the science behind diagnosing and understanding mental health. And then the scientifically based ways of going at or approaching treating them. And then people coming out of a clinical psychology PhD program can do a lot of different things. And I have chosen to do a lot of different things, but you could, go into science and become a researcher. You can go into practice and become a clinician treating people. You can go into industry, and I've done a little bit of that too in digital health. I also work in digital health. So there's a lot you can do with a PhD. I chose to do a combination of all of those things, to do clinical research and try to discover new treatments, and to also practice psychology. So I do have a practice, and I treat individuals with.
Oh, you do?
Oh yeah.
With what?
With psychotherapy, and I'm different types of psychotherapy. So, with addiction, which is where I specialize, although I learned this in graduate school and then it just turned out to be totally true. More often than not, addiction is not the whole story. It doesn't happen all by itself. So usually when I'm working with people who have addiction, they're also struggling with something else underlying or in addition to it, whether that's anxiety or a mood disorder. Most commonly, I'd say anxiety and mood disorders. So it could be bipolar disorder, it could be major depression. But there are also a lot of anxieties that overlap pretty significantly with addiction. So it could be social anxiety, and a person feels like they're not really comfortable in their own skin unless they're using something. It could be generalized anxiety. They worry a lot and they are turning to something to help them kind of get some of those thoughts thoughts under control.
Yeah.
A lot of different things. But so depending on what the problem is, the therapy approach is like, you have to kind of adjust it. But a lot of work in motivational type therapies, like helping a person remember day after day, why am I fighting this fight? Because it's really, really hard with addiction.
Yeah.
Like every day is a struggle at times. And then other therapies kind of trying to help the person. I mean, the technical terms are cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's a lot about just understanding what are the thought patterns in my head that lead me to do things that I later regret, or that are self-destructive. And how do I change the way I'm approaching life, really, like in terms of how I'm thinking about situations I encounter every day.
Where's your practice at?
My practice, it was in Westwood, but I actually transitioned it all to Zoom and virtual during the pandemic.
Everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
I like it in person.
I know. I do too. But like 95% of the people I was working with were like, I never want to go back to in person because
this pandemic just ruined everything, because I like things in person.
Yeah.
I know I do the Zoom sometimes because I have to.
Right.
But, if I were with you, I'd say, listen, Suzette, be in person with me. Meet me at your place. And I would go. Because it's just different. It's just.
It is different.
Right?
It is different.
I know everybody, even in acting, all acting is Zoom now. It used to be going in, It used to be going into the rooms, okay? And there was that energy.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather do Zoom than go into the rooms. I was just too nervous. So in the Zoom, I can make it look perfect, right? Take. But actors don't like the fact that everything's in Zoom now. My son's an actor, great actor, and he has to do Zoom all the time. He'd be great in going in rooms because he has that knack about him. So that's what the pandemic has done. Also in therapy, everything's Zoom.
I mean, it is like it works on Zoom. People do
Yes, it does.
get better, and they can learn things about themselves, like
Yeah.
all the same. But and I feel like the reason that people are preferring it that way now, at least the people I've been working with over time, it's just like here in LA. I don't know how it is everywhere else, but the appeal of saving the hour that they're going to have to come in traffic and
I
park and
get
deal
it.
with the whole thing, they'd just rather
I
do it
get
on
it,
Zoom.
yes.
But there are some people who really don't want that. Like some people who just feel like sitting in front of someone is something that you can't replicate
No.
the energy in the room
No.
over Zoom.
I have somebody who I just saw today. I did one Zoom where it was good. I'm not gonna lie, it was good. But in person, I get into this room and we get to get in there, So let's talk, since we're getting into it so quick. Let me ask you something. At what age or grade did you feel like you've probably always been smart, right? I mean, I know, I'm not going to, but you have to have been. I wasn't. I literally copied my way through high school. It was ridiculous because I was a tough guy.
Well, there are different kinds of smart.
Yeah, there is different kinds of smart.
Mhm.
But I can probably be smart. I was lazy and I didn't want to do the work, right? But I probably could have done it. I chose not to. But I really admire people who, my daughter's got her master's in child psychology, I guess, or maybe something else. Now I'm gonna get in trouble. But I admire people who have that kind of brain. When did you know you're gonna succeed? Was it elementary, high school, college? When?
I have to say elementary.
Wow.
I just if I'm being
That's
totally
great.
self-reflective, I always had like a very strong drive and ambition. And I noticed it in myself. I don't know that in elementary I knew I was gonna be a psychologist, but I knew that whatever I wanted to do, I had to do it to the fullest.
That's
and that I
amazing.
could. And then I got asked by the elementary school teachers, this kid's struggling over here. Can you help him, Suzette? And I'd go, sure. So I that also built me up. I felt like a role model to other kids who may not have been doing as well. So I was always an academically driven kid.
That's amazing. But it's still, it's not an easy thing because you could have thought that in elementary and not made it, like many.
There's no guarantees you're going to make it.
No, there's no. It's like acting.
Even if you believe in yourself, there's no guarantee. But I think probably the sense of and I think this is something that you emphasize on your show, is you never give up.
No,
I think that's what gets people really far. You can be really smart and you can be a failure.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm going to tell you what without getting too personal, I'm going to tell you what I went through and maybe get your feelings about things, and then we'll work it that way. So well, to begin with, I've been playing this character that is off his medication. Been playing it for too long, 4 months. I love GH. I love the character, but I'm not saying that this is the reason that I had this anxiety that happened, but wouldn't hurt. So my wife and my son are two people who, when I'm going through bad anxiety, they're there to get me through it. Well, that anxiety started happening, and my son and my wife were in Europe. So I had to go through this alone. So what I want to do here, that's just coming to me, is tell the story, but then stop, ask you questions. And then, because I made a lot of mistakes. So there in Europe, and I start waking up every night at like 3:30 in the morning, shaking. My thoughts were out of whack. And there in Europe, that's never happened. Now, I even had to have my daughter, Cassidy's sweetheart, sleep with me in bed because I was all messed up. Then the mistake I made, and my daughter, who has a master's, said, Dad, you can't see. I started seeing like 5, 6, 7 different therapists and psychiatrists. That's not a good thing to do, right? Or what do you think?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I had someone ask me this recently in practice, actually.
Oh, really?
It said someone who came to me and said, I have a therapist. Is it okay if I see you and that therapist at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I appreciated the transparency. And that's not the first time that has come up. And I understand that, like, sometimes when you have someone you've been working with, it's kind of hard to let go of them and take like the leap,
Yeah.
the chance. Like, I leave that person and then I'm putting all my trust in someone who I barely know. And what if it doesn't work? And then what if I can't get back with the other person?
Right.
So what I usually say in those situations is like, we can have a little bit of overlap, but ultimately I want you to choose who you feel is the best fit for you. And I do feel like finding a therapist or a psychiatrist, whoever, it's a really big and important decision, because that person you're going to look up to, you're going to respect, they're going to have a major impact on a lot of decisions that you make that affect the way that you function from day to day. They're going to weigh in on their opinions on other relationships you have in your life and how to navigate that. Like, it's actually a really, really important person. So it has to feel like the right person. I wouldn't be rigid about it. Like, oh, you know, only me, and then you have to cut it off first. Like, I'm a little more flexible than maybe some other people would be. They would say you just have to see me, but we were always taught in training in psychology that when you have more than one cook in the kitchen at the same time, trying to lead someone about how to manage their mental health, that can get really complicated and confusing for the person. If everyone's not saying the same thing, how do you figure out what's the best advice? So I don't know if that's what you experienced with the 6 or 7.
Well, the problem was this. And then you'll see what were the main problem that I had, and I don't have anymore because now I have a team. I just didn't have a therapist or a psychiatrist. I kind of had a friend that I would call, and then I'd have nothing. And so what happened is I started going to each of these, and they would give me stuff. I would take it, and then I would fall asleep. I'm not taking it. And then I'd go to the next guy, and he'd give me some, and I'd fall asleep, or whatever it was that I felt weird not taking it. So basically, that I know was not a good thing. It wasn't even that I had a therapist, because I didn't have anybody for more than a day. It's like eat.
Yeah, that was probably doomed to fail.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so then the scary part about this whole anxiety was that I wasn't sleeping. That's what scared me the most.
That's very scary with bipolar, especially.
Right?
It's super scary. Yeah.
And I felt it in my gut. Like, I can fight bipolar. I can fight anxiety. I've done it in depression, but you can't fight not sleeping. So I was taking stuff to sleep, but then that wasn't working. Then I wouldn't, and every morning shaking. So what is that shaking coming from? Nobody seems to give me a real answer to this.
Well, I don't know. I think I have a couple thoughts. I mean, first of all, I feel like you've described shaking before.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Like, I recently watched the episode with Tyler Christopher.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was the one before, but I'm mixing them up. But there was one episode recently.
With him, I talked about shaking.
You talked about the shaking with him.
Yeah.
And you also talked recently about having the flu and coming out and shaking and not sure if that's a panic attack or if it's like the flu, if it's physical or what it is. I find that some people who have anxiety are shakers.
Ah.
It when you're panicking and feeling like there's something that you don't know how you're going to overcome in your life,
Yeah.
or you feel very alone, like your wife wasn't there,
Yeah.
and you're not sure how you're going to manage or navigate that.
Right.
Maybe some people would have heart palpitations. You shake.
That's very true. That's very true, because you know what? Every time you read or you listen to something about anxiety, it's always about heart, your heart. My heart always doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt my heart, but the shaking. But now we're getting into something here. I never shaked until the pandemic. That before I'd have anxiety, panic attacks on the plane, panic attacks at home, whatever, never shake. Maybe it's when you get to that level of panic or anxiety because when I started shaking during the pandemic, it scared the hell out of me.
Shaking is scary because you can't control your body. And it's like, it's a signal like something is really wrong here. And it's actually really hard to interpret what that means. I mean, that's what you're grappling with right now is like, what does this mean?
Right.
And no one can tell me. I mean, sometimes shaking is a side effect of a medication. So that's like something that you want to rule out as well.
Yeah. I don't think it was I think it was
it was that.
It was the anxiety, yeah.
I think it's, if I had to guess, I would say it's severe anxiety. Some people manifest severe anxiety through shaking. And if you don't get heart palpitations, how has your anxiety manifested before?
That's it. Yeah. That makes sense to me. And I don't like it.
Oh, it's very unpleasant. It's very unpleasant.
But it's like, it's not the end of the world, but in my mind it is.
But it feels like the end of the world when it's happening.
Yeah.
So the other way of getting at that question is, what makes the shaking better? Does a benzodiazepine like Xanax make it better? Does someone being next to you or with you make it better? Or like something probably makes it better after a while.
I will say this is a good, I love this conversation. Obviously a benzo will get it. But then my mind's like, it's a benzo. But also what helped people is I listened to Eckhart Tolle, and when I would sit in it, it would go away. When I ran away, it would stay. But how difficult it is to sit in that kind of feeling? I mean, people that don't know anxiety, they don't get it, right? But it's like your whole mind, your whole body is like feeling like just wants to erupt, and you have to sit in it. So it's like,
it's one of the hardest things.
It's very difficult, but it does go away. It does.
Okay, so bingo. If the treatments we know are effective for anxiety, and some have pluses and minuses, so yeah, you're right to worry about benzos in the bigger picture and the long
Like
term,
if you
about
take it too
misusing
long,
them,
yeah.
taking them too long, too often, and all of that. But a benzo is a treatment for anxiety. If benzo makes that symptom go away, and everything else you're listing are great alternative treatments to medications for anxiety. So the sitting in it, that's like a mindfulness practice.
Yes.
And mindfulness is really effective for
Yes.
anxiety. So if those are the things that are working, I feel like if we use deduction back to what was it? What is it?
Yeah.
It's severe anxiety.
Yeah. It is severe anxiety. And I've come to the conclusion now when your anxiety, when it's just regular anxiety, you get through it without, you're cool, everything's, you breathe. I'm doing this Wim's, I forget his last name. So he's the one who jumped into the snow and he does breathing, and you know, I do his breathing is great. I wish I forget names like crazy. But I will say this. Now, I have always had a thing with medication, and I won't even mention the medication because I don't want, you know, somebody told me you shouldn't mention medication because then somebody takes something that you took and it doesn't work or something happens, whatever, it doesn't matter. I've always had a thing with medication where I don't want to be addicted. I don't want to be now I've been taking lithium, that I will because it's on the cover of my book, for 35, 40 years. The best. Haven't had a breakdown in 31 years.
It's amazing.
Right, it's great, right? But for anxiety, I was taking something after the pandemic. That worked. And I'm taking something now that's working. And I talked to my psychiatrist and I said, when can I go off this stuff? He goes, why would you want to go off if it's making you feel so good? Because if you have another one of these that you just had, this close to being a trauma, you could be taking 5 different medications. And I said, 5? Really? Yeah. Because you don't want to go through that again. And 2 things came out of that made me realize if you're taking something and it's working, kind of what you just said with the, you know, when the mindfulness and then medication, if it's working, then do it. And so there you are. What else did he say? It was something great. Anyway, also I came to the conclusion that, because I think I always felt like when I'm taking something, I'm damaged. I don't feel like a human being almost. The lithium's cool. I've been doing I've never had a breakdown again. It's a given. But something else to take, I feel like, then I'm damaged goods. But I have to remember, and this is that I'm not like everybody. I'm mentally ill. When you're mentally ill, you got to do what needs to be done and shut your mouth. I'm not like my friend over there, my friend over there, my friend over there, who doesn't have to take anything. I have to because of what I have and be proud of it in a sense. Thank you. All right.
Well, I'll comment on that. I always feel like all of us we're all dealt a hand of something in life and nobody has the perfect hand, right? So like, and in your cards, you've got talented actor, you've got wonderful family, great marriage, like you've got a lot of great cards. But among your cards, there's the bipolar card in there. Everyone has one of those. They don't all talk about it. And that's unfortunate because it perpetuates that feeling of what's wrong with me. I'm damaged. I'm no good if there's something flawed with me. But people have their card, may be the anxiety card or the parent who's ill or the tough marriage or whatever. We're all struggling with something. And coming to an acceptance of, and also in some ways embracing, like if I have the opportunity to have some great scientifically based treatment for this and it works, I have a lot to be grateful for.
Right.
So we have these very effective medications for addiction, and people often hesitate to take them because not only internally for themselves, they feel like, why do I have to take a drug to overcome this? I must be weak. There must be something wrong with me. But also people in their lives do that. So I don't know if I feel like your family really understands all that you need to do and supports all that you need to do. But there are a lot of people who feel very judged when they make a decision to take a medication for a condition that, especially with addiction, is known for being a problem related to taking too many pills or taking too much of something. So why do I have to do that? Does that mean that that I'm just replacing one drug with another drug? But these medications, especially the ones that have been really well studied, they enable people to function like a person in the world again. They enable a person to feel stable and able to be a great husband and father and uh, contribute to society in whatever way they were born to do, in ways that they couldn't when they're in the throes of their addiction or struggling with a mental illness. So I feel like that experience you're describing of being a little bit at war with yourself about what does it mean about me to take this, it's a common struggle.
Yeah. But, you know, for me, if you're taking something and you have no side effects, like lithium, a lot of people have side effects, losing hair, gaining weight, whatever. I've never had any side effects. When I took what I took in the pandemic, no side effects. What I'm taking now, no side effects. So it's like, there's no problem there. I could see if you had said, yeah, I know, I am lucky with these side effects. Now, I'm just saying, if you're taking something that doesn't give you any side effects and it's only making you feel like you were before, but it's the thing that happens in the head is like, well, that's why I wanted to get off it like the first 2 weeks I was on it. Like, and it's like, just because I guess it makes me feel more normal to not take it.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he told me the consequences, it's ridiculous. And some are better than others, probably. I don't know. I mean, the 2 that I've taken now has been, so don't hesitate, people, if you need it, but not only if you're at that. I would always say, try it without, right? Until you can't. That's kind of the way I've worked. But here's the other way. Here's the key now. The reason this happened to me is because, and I'll repeat it again because it's a great saying and people love it, is an acting coach once said to me that I'm ignorantly arrogant. And so I was not going to therapy. I was not doing what needs to be done. And I think that's going to get you. And it's gotten me a lot, as you probably know. If you're not doing what needs to be done and prevent it from happening, you're in trouble. And now I have a team. I may even come to your house. I don't know. It's, let's talk about your book, Addiction, What Everyone Needs to Know.
Yeah. Oh, wow. The book, I'm very proud of the book. It took me many years to write it. And trying to think of what does everyone need to know and put it all on paper was a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But I wrote the book because of a lot of what we're talking about today around stigma and shame, that there's a lot of stigma and shame around addiction, a lot. And part of that is because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it is and the fact that it's a reflection of a loss of control over something someone's doing. It's not something people choose. It's not a reflection of an awful character. There's just a lot of misconceptions about it, and the fact that it is something that people come back from and they recover from. Not everybody. I watched the episode with Tyler, and I watched it after he had already passed away, and I was sad, very sad about that. And we do see that happen, but not in most people, actually.
No, I would imagine not.
Not for most.
What is the addiction that is the worst?
Honestly, they're all really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people
Alcohol?
often will say, the alcohol isn't talked about enough because it's taken like a little bit of a backseat with some of the more prominent headlines with opioid addiction and
Fentanyl?
overdoses and fentanyl, which is a huge problem. But alcohol is way more widespread than opioid use and opioid addiction.
Yeah.
And so it affects a lot more people in terms of living with an alcohol use disorder. And, I know I keep coming back to Tyler, but, he was someone who suffered from a very severe
Very.
alcohol use disorder. Um, and that is a smaller proportion of people who suffer to the extent that he did and experience those severe withdrawals and the DTs that he described. But that eventually is where alcohol use disorders lead if a person doesn't get it under control.
Yeah.
So
Is it true that he said people would laugh at me because I wasn't doing drugs? But he almost said it like that was such a great thing, but the alcohol itself is bad enough.
the alcohol is bad enough.
I mean, just because he wasn't doing drugs doesn't really mean that the alcohol wasn't that bad. That's how I got when he said it. I just watched it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it true that when you're an alcoholic, usually you do drugs of some sort? Maybe pills or whatever?
I mean, more and more we're seeing that what we refer to as polysubstance use is increasingly common. So people will use one drug to sort of neutralize the effects of another. So someone's using stimulants like cocaine, they're like, wow, I'm too high, I'm gonna drink now. And it is that combination of drugs together, of uppers and downers and double downers and that people are taking together, that is leading to a lot of fatalities. So that's very scary. But
have you seen a lot more in the last couple of years or last 4 years, 5 years?
Well, polysubstance is really common in people who are using opioids. So I'm seeing a lot more of that. Yes, because
what is opioids?
Okay. So an opioid drug is a drug that impacts what we have as these naturally occurring opioid receptors in our brain. So it's heroin, prescription painkillers. It's fentanyl is in there. That is a very, very potent opioid. So that can be 50 times more potent than your typical painkiller. And that's the reason why, for someone who doesn't have any tolerance to opioids and hasn't used opioids in the past, they end up taking something that's laced with fentanyl and maybe they don't even know it. That's why it becomes lethal, because they have no tolerance to the effects of it. The effects, on the one hand, there's the effects that make you feel really good and make you feel euphoric. On the other hand, there are effects on the body that completely depress the respiratory system. And that's what leads people to stop breathing and to overdose very rapidly when their body's not accustomed to any opioid. So that's why you see young people, teenagers overdosing and dying now at rates that we've never seen before. Often they're not intentionally getting into fentanyl, but there is so much out there that's laced with fentanyl that they think they're taking a Vicodin, and they're just, they're hearing about it in social media. They're ordering a pill for $7 on Snapchat and they deliver it to their house.
No.
They take the pill and they're instantly dead.
How quick, when you take the pill, how quick do you go? Like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour?
That's a good question.
I mean, is it like you take it and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, or you kind of, it's feeling good a little bit, then it.
Well, it may feel good initially, but that potency is so strong that the good feeling isn't going to last very long before you go unconscious and you stop breathing and done. Yeah, it's not a long time.
Wow.
Unfortunately, now we have these. We have more widely available this opioid reversal drug called Narcan. I don't know if you've heard about Narcan.
Yeah. But
Well,
they have a
now-
can that isn't. There's something you can do for.
No, would you believe it is so easy now? It's a nasal spray. I mean, it comes in a couple different formats. There's an injector. There's a
Yeah.
couple of different formats, but there's a nasal spray that literally you just spray it in each nostril and the person comes back to life. With fentanyl, sometimes it has to be dosed more than once because it's so potent.
Wow.
But this is what I tell people: if you have teenagers at home, even if they're like good kids and they're not
Right.
into anything and or you don't suspect, they have friends. This is running rampant in teens. If you have teenagers, you have to have Narcan because it makes the difference between
Life and death.
life and death in an instant. Because if you don't get Narcan to someone pretty quickly after they've overdosed, if their respiratory center has shut down and they stop breathing, they are gone. So you can
Now,
reverse
what
that
would
in an
happen?
instant.
I got you on this one. What would happen if, let's say, my son passed out and I thought it was drugs and stuff, but it wasn't, and I gave him this thing? Is that all
Yeah.
right? It wouldn't do anything to
Nothing.
him? Wow, that's
Nothing.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I would put it in there.
You'd spray both of his nostrils and he'd still be passed out and you'd go, it's something else.
Oh, I got
Call
it.
911.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's a game changer, but not enough people know about it. And that's partly why I'm mentioning it is like, if you're someone who uses this other thing we're finding fentanyl in is stimulants. People addicted to cocaine or methamphetamine, stimulants are increasingly laced with fentanyl also.
Damn.
So they think they're just getting a little high and using a little coke, and then they overdose on fentanyl. They didn't know. So anyone who is using substances should have some Narcan around, should have someone around them who knows how to use Narcan, which is actually super easy. You can find videos of it all over the internet, and
You
it's
can't buy it anywhere, but you can get it in the social media.
Narcan?
Yeah.
Narcan you can get it over the counter now in the pharmacy.
Well, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It used to be by prescription only, and it was really kind of expensive, and not enough people had access to it. But recently with this whole pandemic,
forget it.
And the increase, like very dramatic increase in opioid overdose rates, they were able to get it through to make it over the counter. So
I want to tell my friend Anthony who has problems. All right, listen. This is just going so quick. We're probably gonna have to talk another time. Will you come back?
I would love to come back.
Oh, this is great.
There's a lot left to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, because we're already at, I don't know what, but it's ridiculous how fast it's going. Maybe because I'm so into it. I just want to say about what we talked about. Suzette GLASNER. Get her book. You can look it up on Amazon or wherever, your book, right?
On Amazon, yeah.
Addiction, What Everyone Needs to Know. That's the title, right?
That's the title.
Okay. Please get it on Amazon. She's fantastic. I was really into it, talking to her about. It was almost like like I'm talking to a therapist, but kind of just different, kind of cooler. Like we're just like jamming here. But I really appreciate you coming, and we'll do it again. I'll have you come in like every so often. We'll relive everything,
That'd be amazing.
All right. State of mind. See you later. Thank you.